Hey, wanted to take a sec and do another kind of dev blog style video. This time talking about a feature that isn't going to quite make the cut. I figure it's fun to do these dev blogs not only about the successes and the wins, but also the stuff that doesn't quite pan out. This is a feature that I was really excited for too. So um, it's kind of a bummer that it didn't quite pan out, but nevertheless, there's still some cool stuff here to show for the time being. So you notice even when we loaded in there, you saw it was loading in some chunks over a black background. And at first glance, this just being placeholder levels, it doesn't look too impressive. You could say this is probably just a repeating tile, but it's not. This is a absolutely massive map that was, well, I use air quotes here, but hand drawn in LVTK in the map editor. So you can kind of use your imagination here and imagine just what a incredibly expansive hand-drawn, constructed map we could have with this. And given the map size, this is 8 times the size of the current one more run Hintervale clearing level. Pretty impressive performance until we consider that, this isn't yet a game. There's nothing going on here in this simulation. This isn't yet loading in enemies. It's not yet loading in the enemy base. There's no attacks going on. So the performance isn't quite there. And that's not necessarily a fault of this loader, which I guess I should kind of mention what even is it doing. What it's actually doing is, I guess, kind of analogous if you go back to like Super Metroid. When you travel through one of the tubes to travel to the next level, it's got that little animation, and then it takes you to the next level. And during that animation, it's loading in the next level relatively seamlessly, right? In this case, it's streaming those, and you can even see on the edges there, sometimes it's not quite keeping up. It's streaming these levels as we travel, and that's what that cache chunks, visible chunks, those metrics are showing. So it even is scaling it with our movement speed, and I've got the movement speed cranked way up to stress test it. So it's doing some pretty fun stuff there. The reason it's not going to make the cut though is, well, it's not performant enough, and that I don't think is any problem of the loader. It's that it's grafted into an engine that wasn't designed for it, and that's where we really get into bigger problems. When we start trying to hook up enemy spawning and the base and all that, I found it was just bug after bug after bug, and the performance wasn't there at the same time. Just these little inefficiencies add up as I have to continually graft those features into a system that is so dynamic and constantly changing. But those features were designed for a static map environment. So that's a long way of saying, unfortunately, map streaming is not going to make it into one more run. But a lot of big takeaways from this, a lot of new things. Like you notice that loader there, mostly idle, but nevertheless that's running on a separate thread. That's basically it's pulling from the JSON file, from the map file, which every little bit counts to reduce hitching with those IO jobs. So little stuff like that I can pull from this and apply it to the current engine, which is still going to be huge for us. And this map grid, the chunk map, it's such a simple thing, but I realized after it was added, I'm like, it's almost like an old school Zelda map, like from Nintendo, like actual NES Zelda dungeon map. And that minimalist style of map, I love it. I miss it. Modern maps, they spoil too much. It's like you just see this comprehensive world map with all these waypoints to travel to, and there's no sense of exploration. It's just a checklist. But a map like this very minimalist style of map that just gives you a reference point, you really got to kind of turn your brain on and say, okay, where am I going? Where do I remember things being? What haven't I yet explored? And maybe, a step above this is where the game will land, that gives a little bit of player feedback. But I still think that's a big takeaway from this is a map, a minimalist map like this, I think would be a huge win for one more run in terms of encouraging exploration. Anyways, now I'm getting rambly, but I guess that's kind of half the point of dev blogs. hopefully this was interesting for someone out there watching it. If anyone's curious about map streaming, has any interest in building something like this themselves, feel free to reach out. I'm certainly not an expert by any means. I'm just someone tinkering and experimenting and breaking things. But still coming up with some fun stuff as we go, trying to solve problems. So yeah, anyways, I'm going to get back to cooking up one more run and get back to actually productive things instead of playing around with cool new toys like this that don't pan out. But if we don't try, we'll never know, right? All right. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Bye.